Don't ever believe it when people say no one goes to jail for marijuana. You can go to jail for marijuana possession. You can go to jail for a little joint. You can go to jail for a little half gram of hash. Heck, you can get murdered in jail for possession of marijuana. Only 2 weeks ago in Houston, a young black woman, actually a month ago, she was arrested for a small quantity of marijuana, about 4 grams. She was put in jail for marijuana possession. And she wouldn't be, she was given bail conditions. She couldn't get out unless she made bail. Her family is quite poor. They're refugees from the Katrina hurricane disaster, and they live in Houston. And they were trying to raise the money for her to get bail 17 days later when she was murdered in prison only 2 weeks ago. She was murdered in prison. She was killed by the system for just having 4 grams of marijuana. But it can get much more cruel than that. I've got many, many stories of this. I can tell you stories all night long because everybody calls me. Whenever they're busted, I get hear about it. We get all the newspapers as an editor of Cannabis Culture magazine for 4.5 years, and as the publisher for 5 years or 15 years. I can tell you there are endless heartbreaking stories of people who have gone to jail for marijuana and had a terrible tragedy befall them. 5 years ago, in Washington, D.C., a black man is a quadriplegic in his car. He's a passenger. Now, he can only move his head like that. The rest of his body doesn't work. He has tubes to go to the bathroom out of him. He has tubes going in to feed him. And he was in a passenger in a car that was pulled over, and they smelled his marijuana, and they brought him before the court. And the judge said, I hope you've learned your lesson by being brought to court here, that marijuana is bad for you and you shouldn't have it. Now, it's bizarre that people in this world feel they're qualified to lecture a quadriplegic. I mean, I may have gone to jail an awful lot, but all my limbs are working, I can still see, I can still do things, I'm still having fun. And I just can't imagine under what circumstances I'd be lecturing someone who can merely wobble their head and speak, and that's all they can do. And yet, the Judge Retchen, reminds me of the nurse in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I forget her name. Ratchet, that's right. Judge Retchen of the Washington, D.C. court sentenced him to 10 days in jail because he said, no, Your Honor, without marijuana my life would be not worth living. I'd be miserable. It's helped me out, it's helped me cope, it's stopped me from killing myself. I won't give up marijuana. And she said, well, you're simply not getting this, so I'm going to sentence you to 10 days in jail. Well, not even that surprisingly, terrible tragedy, he died on the 5th day in jail. No one knew what to do with all his tubes. No one knew what to do with all his tubes. And Jonathan Magby died, judicial homicide they call it, being sentenced to jail for possessing less than 1 ounce of marijuana. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. And it doesn't even make any sense. Just like the drug literature law didn't make any sense unless the purpose of government is to suppress the truth. If the purpose of government is to suppress the truth, then it all makes sense. I've been doing this for 20 years. I started 20 years ago in front of the London police station here, trying to get charged so I could go and strike down the laws against the truth, the drug literature law. And what a long, strange trip it's been, because I guess now I've got my fantasy. I guess now I am the #1 threat to the United States. I mean, I always wanted to be, really, because that's the source of a lot of the evil that comes from the world, is the United States government. We've seen so much bad things come from the U.S. in the last 20 years. Wars, endless wars abroad, endless perfidy abroad. And I thought to myself, well, somehow I can come up with some revolutionary idea to topple that U.S. government, to drain it dry, to make sure it spends billions of dollars in money in a futile war that involves plants. And I thought of this idea when I was in London, Ontario here in 1990. I said, listen, the problem with politics, and I founded the Freedom Party of Ontario in 1980. And I realized then, though, that, to get a donation for a political party, you had to beg. I was tired of begging people, give us $20 here, give us $50, give us $100, so we can have this party and we can field candidates and we can tell the truth and we can oppose the government's lies and deceitful agenda. But boy, that was a slow way to earn money. I said, no, we need millions of dollars. We need a way to get millions and millions of dollars. And we need this great plan that even just one person can succeed in to set an example for others. And that's when I came up with this really great idea. The best idea I ever had was called overgrowing the government. Because I thought, well, overthrowing the government A violent revolution, violence begets violence. I've never seen a revolution that started with violence that ever ended without endless violence. Because you introduce that as a methodology and it legitimizes it for anybody else who wants to seek power or who wants to influence change. But I thought, well, why don't we set an incredible example of a successful revolution that uses truth, nonviolence, peace, consent, and plants. Plants can't possibly hurt it. All plants are inert and are subject to interpretation or use by the user, by the human user. Plants themselves have no evil quality. Plants themselves aren't conscious about what they're doing. Plants simply exist and are cultivated and nurtured. And I thought, well, what if we grew millions, perhaps tens of millions, perhaps even hundreds of millions of marijuana plants around the world? The governments would have to spend billions and billions of dollars and tens of thousands of people chasing them down every day. And I thought, that's how we'll do it. We can exhaust them. Because in modern warfare, the only way to win against someone who has all the laws, all the guns, all the money, all the power, and all the willingness to use them in a violent brutality, how can you defeat such an army of evil? How can one man make a difference? And I thought, well, this will be it. I'll sell seeds. I'll sell as many seeds as I can, because seeds were very hard to find. And we'll increase the cultivars of cannabis to hundreds and hundreds of them, and we'll spread these seeds all over the world and all over North America, and people will send me money for these seeds. And indeed they did. They sent me millions of dollars for those seeds. And with that money, I gave away $4.5 million in a space of 10 years to foment a revolution, a peaceful revolution, a botanical revolution, a revolution about the truth, without violence, without coercion. All about the values I believe in and have always believed in. And when I was in London, Ontario, everybody knew it was all about consent. It was all about the truth. It was all about freedom. How do we get that, though? The government is so huge and so large and so well equipped with guns and people willing to use those guns, and all our money that they've stolen from us, they use it against us. How can we possibly fight? Well, we were very successful because I raised millions of dollars and gave it away. By the way, just so if you ever, I don't know what you've ever heard, but I never kept any of it for myself, those millions of dollars. I gave it all away. I never owned a car. I never owned an apartment. I never owned any property, stocks, bonds, investments of any kind. I didn't need to. I just needed enough to live on. My purpose in life is the revolution, is truth, is the move. I don't need to spend on it. I have no hobbies. I have no other drug habits other than the occasional joint. I don't have anything else I need to spend money on whatsoever. So I gave it all away, and I was incredibly happy to. We financed the global marijuana marches around the world from 1997 to 2005. I financed the Supreme Court challenge to the marijuana laws in 2003. Cost $85,000. Money we raised in this manner. I paid for class action suits in the United States against the U.S. federal government. We provided money to start marijuana parties in Israel and New Zealand and Australia and most Canadian provinces and many states in the United States. We were giving money away to politicians, ballot initiatives. We were the largest donor for legalization initiatives in Arizona. In Colorado, in the early part of the century, in Washington, D.C. in 1998, we gave $5,000 to an initiative that actually passed to legalize medical marijuana in the District of Washington, and the government overturned it by simply refusing to give them the money to count the ballots. Government is willing to stoop so low as to deny the money to count the ballots in a legitimate election process. Your freedoms are very tenuously there, and they're only there because people fight for them. Single, lonely, solitary individuals. You can never count on your institutions to defend you. You certainly can't count on the media to defend you. And you certainly can't really count on big corporate interests. It all comes down to our freedom rests in the hands of people like me and you.